Hi, Barbara.
How are
How
you?
are you? It's so good to see you.
I know.
Thank you so much for being on my award-winning, highly acclaimed podcast.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, I've totally been there where I've been like, oh my gosh, I have something to do today. Oh wait, it is today, like
Oh my gosh, it's so good. It's so good to see you. Yeah, I thought I was supposed to pick my mom up at the airport tomorrow, but then she texted me this morning and said, I'm in Minneapolis. See you soon.
you're like, oh yeah, of course. Like I'm totally on top of it. I knew you were coming today.
Yeah. Well, to everyone
Where are you
listening,
living now?
yes, please.
It's very
New
tropical
York.
where you are.
I'm in Ithaca, New York. Yes, I'm visiting my mom. I was in Croatia, and then I came back to the States. I went to spoke at a conference in DC about homeschooling, and then I decided to spend some time with my mom. She really missed me, and she
Yeah.
promptly took off for 10 days to visit friends. So it's good. It's good. It gave me time to start a podcast about finding love.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, no, it's been great. And then next week I'm gonna head back to New York City.
Okay.
Yes, which I know is a city dear to your heart.
Oh yes. I obviously was there for many years.
Yeah.
Or I really like at a certain point, I was just like, if my idea of a fun Friday night is like watching Netflix and getting takeout, like New York City is probably not where I need to be living anymore.
Yeah. I mean, you can definitely watch Netflix and order takeout in New York City.
Oh
And
no, I loved it, but it was like that's what I want to do every Friday. Like,
um,
yeah,
yeah,
it's time to go.
it's time to go to a more Netflix and takeout conducive environment. Yeah, for
Exactly. It's
sure.
a very expensive place to sit on your couch and stream and like
Yeah.
binge stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I hit record the second we came on because I feel like there's always this really excited energy at the beginning of a conversation that I never capture in my podcast. So I decided
Yeah.
to see what happened. But yeah, so we're
Awesome.
recording. And yeah, I'm just so excited to see you and introduce you to everyone. This is my cousin, Barbara. I think technically maybe like my second cousin in law, but nevertheless, cousin. And I've been following your story for a while through my Aunt Lynn, and you were in my French class, very much beautiful woman of fashion in New York, and then, also had difficulty in the beginning finding a life partner, but now you're married and just had your second baby.
I did.
Yay.
I'm actually on maternity leave right
Oh
now.
my gosh,
So
it's so inspiring. It's so great. Well, I tell everyone in this show, like, if I ask you something that's too personal or intimate, please, you don't need to share everything, but some people have
I
shared.
may though.
Good, good. That's better. People like the raunchy details for sure. Some people have been very forthcoming. I'll
Yeah.
just say that, including myself. But wonderful. Okay, so I guess to start out, maybe can you just give us like a perspective on your current scene? What are you doing in your life? Who's your husband? Your first
Um,
child? Like, what are you passionate about? How old are
Absolutely.
you? All
Like
the
I
good
said,
stuff.
I'm currently on week 13 of my 14-week maternity leave. So I will be going back to work soon. Sorry, I haven't been on this computer in like 3 months. So
Okay.
now all of these meeting invites are coming in from my job. This is what I get to look forward to going back to.
Oh my gosh, so exciting.
So anyways, so my story basically, I grew up in Texas, went to UT, Hookham, and then left Texas for
Hmm.
jobs and adventure. So I lived in Chicago for 2 years, what I call the two coldest years of my life.
Cold, yes.
And then I moved to New York City after that, where
Less
I
cold.
lived for cold, but not as cold as
Not as
Chicago.
cold as Chicago.
Not as windy, yeah. So I
Comparatively
lived there
cold.
for almost 9 years. And then, like I said earlier, advice that I had gotten from people was, don't leave New York until you're really ready to leave, or else just
Mm.
miss it like crazy. So I waited till I was ready.
Yeah.
And then I said sayonara and kind of didn't look back. And I miss my friends, but I don't miss living in the city at all. So
Were you
I've been,
trying to date when you were in New York?
oh, yes, I feel like I was online dating since I was like 25 years old,
Okay.
starting from, eHarmony and
Yep,
Match.com. Like,
been
I was
there.
like the early adopter of online dating, and did it over many years and many different platforms. And that's actually how I met my husband. Uh,
Amazing.
I know
What's
that
the
online,
winning platform?
so we met on Bumble.
Okay.
And that was 7 years ago. I know online dating is incredibly polarizing for people. You love it, you hate it. Everyone's had all sorts of stories and experiences, including myself. Great experiences. Obviously, I met my husband there. Horrible experiences that I wouldn't wish on anyone. Um,
Traumatic and
Traumatic, yeah,
yeah.
really, rattle you to the core experiences.
Oh,
Uh, but it ended up working in the end after, who I would have never met my husband otherwise. I mean, I'll say that. So the algorithm did eventually work.
oh my
So
gosh. It works. So, oh my gosh. All right. How about, do you want to tell like one of your worst online dating stories?
oh
I
my
feel like
God.
everybody has one.
Yeah, I mean, I have two that were just like
Okay.
equally rotten and horrible. Um, So one, okay, I think this is kind of like the weirdest, worst one. Went out with this guy, met him online, seemed like a totally normal dude, cute. Okay, this was in New York. Um, and went out a few times, and then
Give
he
him a
kind of
good
like
chance.
kept bringing up that he was divorced. And I was like, you know what? It sounds like you want to talk about that.
Hmm.
So tell me what happened, So he kind of went into it as like, oh, my wife left me for another man. I was like, okay, well, I'm really sorry to hear that. Thanks for sharing, whatever. So, we continued to date. We probably went out on five times total. And then he ultimately goes, one night we're having dinner at my apartment. He's like, I need to tell you something about my divorce. I'm like, okay, here it comes. And he says, you know, my wife did leave me for another guy, but it was because he was into, are you familiar with the term cuckolding? Where
Oh,
you watch
dear.
your partner have sex with someone else?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No,
So
I haven't.
that was something that he was into.
Oh, that
And
was a fetish of his. Lovely.
that
Mm-hmm.
was a fetish of his. And his wife left him for the other guy. Okay. But then he goes on to tell
It's
me
amazing, like what goes on in people's bedrooms. At this point, he's in your apartment, and you're like, "Where do
he's
I?"
in my apartment at this
Right,
point, and
right.
I'm
Oh
making
my
him
gosh.
dinner, and I'm thinking, like, okay, so this just made a turn. That's not what I was expecting.
Oh my
But
gosh.
then it gets better. And he says, and this is, a very active like fantasy of mine. And I would like to continue to like, you know, experience that with whoever I'm with.
Oh no,
So,
no.
and I'm thinking like, yeah, not gonna be me. So ultimately I was like, that's very brave. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm not going to be that person, but the internet is a broad place, and I'm sure you'll find someone who's also into that.
Oh my gosh. You just won a dinner outside my home in the restaurant next door.
Right. I was just,
Ah,
I didn't want to be like, get out of my apartment. I just wanted to be like, okay, like that's very mature that you told me.
just shared
I'm
it.
not into that, but there's other people who are, and you should go find them.
And you should go find those people and make it very clear on your dating profile from the get-go. I think
Yeah,
that's your
very clear.
thing.
Yeah, for sure. Very clear on the dating profile, but there was a part of me that appreciated like how forthcoming he was with that
Sure.
information within just a couple dates,
Yeah,
So he
absolutely.
could have never said anything, like, and who knows where we'd be now. But um, yeah, no, I think that is something that I learned in online dating is to just be very upfront about who you are and what you're looking for. Like,
Absolutely.
try
Absolutely.
your freak flag, whatever you like, whatever, it's like, I like dogs. It's like, guess what? Everyone likes, most people like dogs. Like, that's not
Yeah. Yeah,
where,
totally.
like really kind of like get into the meat of what you're
Absolutely.
looking for and who you are.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that you're just so brave to do the online dating because I think we all have kind of funny stories like that. I mean, I went on a very odd date one time where I think it was a guy who was involved in a very specific cult of Christianity. I mean, I'm Catholic and I love the Christians, but it was very kind of very specific, let's say, and about like believing that every single thing in the Bible is exactly true and factual. And
Mm.
the entire dinner, he just gave me a proselytizing lecture on it with like almost no opportunity to dive in, to the point where I really started to feel like there was something mentally off with him. And, and I went home and I think he asked me out again, but it was just very uncomfortable. But I've also been on date, when you kind of laugh about that a little bit and I'm sure there's some wonderful woman in his close community who would be into that. But
Yeah.
but I've also been on dates where I felt physically unsafe, where I felt like it became too intimate. And when I said I don't want that kind of touch, they persisted. I mean, fortunately, I've never been the victim of sexual violence, but I have been in situations where it got very uncomfortable. And I know women who have. So it's
Right.
very hard to put yourself out there. You can feel very unsafe. And it's very brave to continue. And I mean, I think actually what's funny for me is that when I built my first startup, I started doing a lot of hiring. And now I really just look at the dating apps like a hiring app. Like you need to get as many candidates as possible. Some are going to be bad, some are going to be good. And then
Oh, for
and then
sure.
you just think like, okay, like this is something I have to go through because I want to meet someone really great.
Yeah, and there's many ways to meet people. Obviously, dating apps are a relatively new thing. In the thousands of years
Right,
people have been deciding to get married or even arrange
right,
marriages,
right.
whatever. Um, but it does seem to be how most of the people met who I've been to their weddings within the last couple years.
I mean,
So
honestly, you have more options.
you really do. And like I said, there are tons of toads and creeps and jerks on online dating and people who ghost you, but those people like aren't worth your time at all.
Absolutely. Not worth your time. You just
I
move right
Yeah.
along. So,
Yeah.
do you think that, okay, so one significant change in your life is that you moved from New York City to Dallas. And I mean, you only need to open one dating book to know that the dating scene in Dallas is very different than the dating scene in New York. Did you find it to be very different right away, or did you not experience that so much?
I did. I did. I found it to be very different right away. Um uh for sure. I mean, it's a place where getting married, having kids, dating is, just it, you see it so much more. It's like happening all around you all
The
the time.
culture.
It's definitely a culture for sure. Um, Now what I found was interesting is, I moved to Dallas in my early 30s. So, by that time, like a lot of people are already married
All the good
at
ones
that
you
point
take.
for a long time,
They get
like
married pretty young out
I
there, 21,
there's
22.
a joke that like, when I'm 42, I'm in my early 40s, that your friends from high school either have kids who are toddlers or kids who are driving,
Yeah, yeah,
like,
exactly.
so, and that's just how it goes. But what I found very interesting, my husband told me this in his online dating experience is, at the age that we were at, our mid 30s, um, either people were incredibly religious or they were like off the rails, like party animals. There was nothing in between. And I guess that's kind of what I found was there
That's
were people who were
true.
really like conservative or religious. And then a couple dates I went out on, I was like, this person is so drunk right now. Like, this is not okay. Like,
Like, gosh,
and
that's really scary too on a first date.
yeah, so it was a different experience. It was definitely more chill. But yeah, it's just a totally different vibe than
Mm,
being in New
yeah.
York. And even in New York, when I knew that I was moving, I stopped online dating. And then
Mm.
also a number of times throughout my online dating career, I decided like
Unpaid volunteer work.
I needed to retreat. Like I needed to just
Oh
take a
yeah,
break.
the
I
detox
need a
for
break. And I
sure.
would do that. And, I found that that was like mentally something that I needed to do on occasion.
You can really get fatigued. I think my biggest problems are feeling like FOMO. Like I have to look at every single option available before I narrow in on the perfect guy. And then I just swipe. Like one time I swiped so many profiles, like I actually injured my finger. Like my finger hurt because I was like, I went to San Francisco and I'm gonna swipe every single man available in the city. And I think I literally did like 4,000 profiles. It was before Bumble set the limit, which now you can pay to not have. Anyway,
Yeah,
and then
and that's a whole other thing how online how dating apps have changed to gamify and monetize what they're doing, and
yeah,
that's a whole other
that's a
thing.
whole other thing. I mean, some people think they're even designed to like not have you meet someone,
One of
but
okay, so
yeah.
one of my best friends
Okay.
from college, her
Yeah.
name is Shani Silver. She has built an online community
Ooh.
for single women in their late 30s
Oh
and
my
40s.
gosh. Oh my gosh. Sign me
He has a
up.
podcast called A Single
Okay.
Serving, and has written a book. She used to write for Refinery 29 and many other websites. So
Wonderful.
definitely check
Yeah,
that
I'll
out.
join
But
that one for sure. We'll plug it in the show notes as well. Shani
yeah,
Silver.
Shani
Okay.
Silver.
All right. So
Yeah.
I got a little distracted. I'm sorry. So you moved to Dallas.
Yeah.
So I'm also wondering at the time that you moved and it kind of like you were meeting crazy party guys or super traditional guys and then like but there's more of a culture of marriage and family, but a lot of the
Mhm.
guys already married when they were 20 and have teenagers.
Yeah.
Do you feel did anything change inside you where you kind of either like became more open or changed your mentality about what you were looking for? Like was there
Mhm.
any inner work that went on in that process?
Absolutely. So, when I moved to Dallas, I online dated for a little while, and then I actually was in a long-term relationship before I met my husband with a guy who was best friends with my brother and very close with my family and
Wow.
my niece's godfather. So very like intertwined in my
Amazing.
family. And you know, he's a great guy. It just didn't end up being what I wanted and for me. And I feel like that relationship was one of the things that really made me feel like, well, what do I really want?
Yeah.
Okay. What am I looking for? What are my deal breakers? It's not at a certain point, you're like, it's not just being tall anymore. It's like, are you a good person? Are you going to be a good father? Is that what you even want? And I feel like that and I feel like that also happens when you're getting older in the dating scene as well. Whereas I felt like when I was younger, it was way more, like physical what I was looking
Yeah,
for.
for
And when
sure.
I got older, it was more like, well, what type of person, religion, finance, politics, all the things you're never supposed to talk about. Those
Mm,
are the things that are actually really important in a relationship.
yeah.
And what I've found, being married to my husband is we totally jive on those things.
Mm,
Where I think if you aren't very upfront or maybe like suppress those things and how you feel about certain topics,
mm,
uh, that can really cause problems in the future.
yeah.
And so with my old boyfriend who was very close with my family, this sounds crazy, but I really feel like Trump getting elected was one of like the nails in the coffin because he seemed to like not care. I mean, he was incredibly religious. I myself am not very religious. So that was another thing where I was like, I'm like not along for this ride. And I'm sure he could find someone who really wants to be. But like the Trump thing, I was like, you're not upset about this at all.
I
And
know, I
he just didn't
know.
care. And I was like, how can you? It was one of those things where it's just like, oh my gosh, who is this person? Could I be with this person? I don't
Wow.
know. Like it started planting all these seeds of doubt, which
Oh my
eventually
gosh.
turned into us
I
breaking
mean,
up. But it was scary because I thought we were on the track getting married. I was like, this is happening. I'm going to check that box. And then I was like, wait,
wow.
pull back. This is not what you want.
It's so wild that you say that, because I think that, I mean, there is one path where you just release all expectations and marry the first nice guy who comes along who can make kids with you and, find a way to make it work. And that has a lot of value. I'm not opposed to that path. And it definitely opens up the ease and the options.
Yeah.
And then there's this other path of becoming incredibly specific about what you want and opening the way up there. And I really resonate with you, because I didn't think, for me, politics was important as well. I mean, I'm more interested in history and systems thinking. So I kind of tried to see like what happens if I date someone more like right wing or conservative, and it just, no, like I just didn't jive with me. I mean, I didn't jive with me to meet someone who's like very pro gun, because all I can think about is school shootings. I mean, and I feel like on some level, and hopefully we get some very kind of fiery comments about this, which I always welcome, but I just, I can't connect with someone who would want to elect someone like Trump, who wants to deport 10 million immigrants. When someone like my parents left before the Holocaust, my grandparents, because they were Jewish, and I wouldn't have even existed if, and I studied American studies, and I just so appreciate the way that this country, unlike France, is part of its culture is able to integrate people from different countries and different religions. I mean, it has the most amazing pluralism of almost any place in the world. Like France is having a really hard time with that, even though they want to open their doors.
Mhm.
Same with Italy, So anyway, I digress. But these
But I
issues are
but I think
important. Yeah,
those like off topic things, those are the things that are gonna that will like long term like eat away at your soul. Money is another one. Are you a spender or are you a saver? You
that's
know?
true.
So, I mean, little things when I met my husband, it's like, where does he live? What type of car does he drive? Like all these little things that I'm like picking up as, like, is this person gonna like jive with my values and how I want to live my life for the rest of my life?
Absolutely. Like for me, I would never expect someone to pay for me on a first date. I don't require it. I don't think you're a bad person if you don't pay for me on a first date. But if you don't pay for me on a first date, I don't want to date you again. Like you're just not like the kind of person that I would want to date, because you're not like someone who would enjoy
Right. Or
treating
at
people
least like
to a coffee
offer. And
or
if I
offer,
say,
yeah, or fight me a little. But yeah, so I think that, I mean, I don't agree with the like man should pay thing, but for me, it kind of signals that the person is a bit more like, he is this nature of wanting to provide and wanting to give me pleasure, and I like that.
Mhm. Yeah, and those are all like little key like one of the things that I did when I was online dating was, I'm not very religious. I don't go to church. So I would be like, do you want to meet on Sunday morning for coffee?
Oh, clever.
So I was like, they're like, no, I'm going to church. I'm like, oh, probably this is really not gonna work out. So, that was just one of my little things
Your
that like,
pickings in Dallas are mighty slim, Barbara.
yeah.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
those are just little things that
Oh,
like I did where I was like,
I love
I'm gonna
that.
use
So
this as a
clever.
way to just like, find out more about someone that's maybe not in their profile or they're, not discussing right away. So, and I knew I was like, I'm in my 30s. I want this to happen. I want to have kids. So like if you're not checking these like major boxes, like I gotta move on. Like I don't have time. You might be really nice, but it's just not gonna happen.
Yeah, I love coffee dates too, because I find that it's just so low pressure. You can leave as soon as you want. It also kind of solves the payment thing. I feel like the whole pay thing on a first date is so awkward. With a coffee shop, I can just waltz right in and buy my own coffee, and then I'm just waiting for him when he arrives, and we just drink our coffee. And how uncomfortable are you going to get? I mean, like having a 1 45 minute 1 hour chat with someone. Whereas if I go out and drink with someone on a first date, I get drunk, and then I'm not really able to appropriately judge them. And I mean, there was this one guy I went out with who thought he was the second coming of Jesus. And we met in this dark bar, and he was like, and he literally thought this, like, we had this like really nice kind of spiritual conversation, and like we kissed, and I thought he was so hot. And then he showed up the next day, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, first of all, he looked kind of gross to me. And I know that's a horrible thing to say about someone, but a lot of these guys in Austin kind of have like these big beer bellies. It's like a specific triangularly shaped belly, not like,
Mhm.
I eat a lot of nice pasta, but just like an alcohol belly. And he was just so weird and awkward and just got like, and he ended up like, that was actually ended up being one of the situations where I felt a bit traumatized after we were intimate. Like, not we didn't, well, anyway, I'll go into details, but and I just like, I drank too much and it clouded my judgment and didn't see like, this person is nuts.
Yeah, when I first went out with my husband, he was actually on Whole30, and so he wasn't drinking at
Oh,
all or, like, eating a number of different, like, things, so, I mean, it was, yeah, a very sober first date,
a
which
sober first date. I love
yeah,
that.
so, I mean, you there's no hiding what you're like when you're sober.
All right. So you asked him out for coffee. He wasn't going to church that day.
Yeah, I wasn't going to church. I mean, I feel like in my profile, I was like, loves NPR, looking to get married and have kids. I mean, like I was very I wish I would have saved my profile so I like remember what I wrote and like and what he wrote in his.
So good.
But I know he's was still very good friends with an ex-girlfriend of his, and his ex-girlfriend actually saw my profile and was like, you need to go out with this girl.
Oh,
Like
good.
this is probably
Yeah.
this could be good. So, we messaged back and forth. He actually lived in New York City during a handful of the years that I was there.
Wow.
Obviously, we didn't know each other, but we have this shared experience of having lived in New York at the same time. And everything that entails from living in a tiny apartment to he managed bars and restaurants in the West Village close to where I lived. Like our paths may have crossed, who knows?
Wow.
It was very interesting. But we messaged back and forth a lot before we met because I was going on a trip with my brother and sister-in-law. And I remember thinking, like, when I get back, I have to see this guy. Like, don't let this one die on the vine. There was
Oh,
just
so
something there where it was
good.
like, I must see this person in real life.
I
So,
love it. I love that so much. How long had you been texting at that point? Or
I mean, probably like a couple weeks, and then I was maybe I don't, it's hard to remember. Um, Probably at least 2 weeks, and then I went on this trip for a week, and then came back, and it was like, when can we like see each other? When can we
oh,
go
good.
out?
I love that. Did
Yeah.
you, okay, so back to this question of what changed in you before you met him. So you got more
Yeah.
specific about what you wanted. Did you read any books or anything or
Oh
like,
my gosh, it's interesting you say that. Yes, I when I lived in New York, I read a book. I don't even remember what it's called, but maybe it was called like Mr. Good Enough or something like that. It sounds awful, and everyone tells you
it sounds
don't.
like Little Miss Happy, Little Miss
I
Curious,
know, everyone tells you,
Mr.
like,
Good Enough. Someone should make like
don't
a
don't
funny like
settle,
a
don't
parody of
lower your standards, but really what this book said, the message was all about what is important to you. And,
Hmm.
the most important things, like, to me, and really what came out of this book and the author's experience was good person, gonna be a good father, like, you know, height, having tons of money, all these that stuff doesn't matter
Still
at the
does
end.
matter.
Important can still be
I
won
like
and
how you
lost,
concluded like height is a deal breaker. I need that.
Oh, no, I'm a tall
I need him
person,
to
so,
be able to reach the jar.
I mean, I'm 5'9", so,
Yeah.
but it was a very eye-opening book because the message was to boil down what is really important
Hmm.
to you. And this person is not going to be perfect. And guess what? You're not perfect either. And I see this like in my relationship, even now, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm such a pain right now. Like they're not perfect. I'm not perfect. And no one's perfect. So you're not going to find the perfect person. You just have to find the best person for you. And I felt like that book
Oh,
really like
yeah.
really opened up my eyes to that mentality. And then really especially after that big breakup that I had, and that relationship lasted over a year. And I really didn't have many long-term relationships in my dating life. So that was a really big deal for me to be with someone for a year.
Mm,
Um, I
yeah.
think, where was I going? I had a thought there. that I've kind of lost.
But what was there was then you
Oh,
realized with him that it wasn't exactly what you were looking for. What
yeah,
was
it wasn't
it's the
exactly what
Donald
I
Trump.
was looking for, but also,
Yeah.
I kind of came to the point where I was like, you know what? If I don't meet anyone, I'm going to be just fine and I'm going to have an awesome life. So
Mm,
and I just kind of made that decision. Like, if this doesn't end up happening, I'm still going to have a fantastic life. And I'm
and
going to surround myself with friends and family and travel and do all these things that I want to do. And I had been on trips by myself and I'll go to the movies by myself. I don't care. Like, I was just like, I'm not going to let anything hold me back. If I want to go do something, I'm going to do it.
I love that. And when I was younger, I really thought about that state in a way of like, if I feel happy with myself, then I'll meet someone. And and I think it's really hard to get there with that mentality. I mean, it's kind of like the elephant in the room, right? Is like, oh my gosh, once I feel good, I'll meet the guy. But they're actually two distinct things. I mean,
Yeah.
being happy and fulfilled in your life is such a great goal in and of itself. I remember when I went abroad to Croatia, that was the first time I really saw the perks of being single, in that I could just take off whenever I wanted, live in Croatia for 6 months, go to Rome. Like, there's no one else to worry about or kids to worry about. I can just move around as I see fit, hook up
The
with hot
freedom is
Croatian guys,
incredible.
right? And it was like, wow, I have so much freedom. And that's wonderful. And kind of now I'm at a point where I'm listening to my heart. I realize this is something that is still I still desire. It's worth pursuing. And I'm also super happy, and as a coincidence, that'll probably make it easier to meet someone. But if I don't, just being happy like this is, oh my gosh, the best gift ever. I'm so fortunate.
For sure.
Okay, so back to you. So you kind of like got happy and good, and you started like reevaluating what you want. And probably a lot of it became clearer after this relationship that,
Well, because I really was like, oh my God, what did I do? There was like a week where I was like, oh my God, what did I just make a horrible mistake? Like, did I just give up my
of
chance of
course,
being married and having children? And then I was like,
hard.
oh, that was a good decision.
Wow, only a week. I'm impressed, Barbara. You're pretty resilient. It took me like 2 years to get over my first year-long relationship, first and only year-long relationship.
But yeah, I mean, but it was one of those things where it's like, oh no, that was what I was supposed to do. And not to say that I went back to dating right away because I didn't. Like, I definitely took time for myself and I retreated and that was just what I needed to do. And then when I felt ready, I got back in the game.
Got back on the horse. Okay, so you got back in, started dating. Like, how long after that did you meet your
Probably 6 months.
not long. Not long.
Yeah, not long.
Not long, but not long.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't feel like it took I went out on like a handful of dates with other people and then met my husband and then, within pretty shortly thereafter that I was like, this is a guy that I definitely want to date, maybe
Yeah.
marry.
What
Yeah.
were the signs?
It was just so easy.
Mm,
Like, you could and I say that now, like, I could just hang out all day with you, like we could just hang out. And it was very comfortable and easy and we liked the same things and we kind of thought the same way about a lot of things and we
mm,
just it's one of those stupid things where it's just like when you know. And it really that's kind of how it happened. It was just
so
like, oh
good.
yeah, this is good.
Yeah,
This
it
is
felt right. Wow. I
felt
mean,
right.
and
I'm
so
very comfortable.
yeah, like in terms of just your strategic plan beyond the inner work, I mean,
Mhm.
like, was it pretty much straightforward? Like, you were swiping, you were trying not to be too picky about how people looked or how tall they were, how much money they made, and then you would just say, "Would you want to meet me for a coffee?" Or
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm trying to remember what like when I was like, in the trenches with it.
in it to win
Hey,
it.
I was not doing a ton of like asking people because on Bumble, obviously you make the first move.
Yeah.
Um, so I would say I mean, I hate using the word picky, but when I saw things in people's profiles that were like, this is probably not gonna work. Like, I didn't spend any time on it. I kept going,
So you
you
were
know.
selective.
I was selective. That's a great way to say
I
picky.
like it. Yeah. I mean, selective. And you're gonna be doing the other person a favor as well. So
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about looks, because you did talk about this transition from like wanting to date the guy you thought was hottest to focusing on those inner qualities. And that's a pattern I see a lot around women who are having trouble before and then found their guy. And I feel like I'm kind of somewhere in the middle where I think that I really like want to see myself with some hot Latin tall lover who's like buff arms, not too skinny, not too fat, just like if all of my friends are like, oh my gosh, your husband is so hot, you must be so gorgeous, all that stuff. But also, I know that, like, my last boyfriend, I just thought I really believed that he was the most handsome man in the entire world. And the man before that, I also, like, a guy I just been on like 2 dates with, I thought he was the most handsome man in the entire world. And I was almost afraid when I showed his picture to my family and they would say, like, oh, he looks great, like, that everybody was thinking, like, what is he doing with her? Like, I thought that. And so it was funny because I would just look at him sometimes and be like, wow, you're so gorgeous, and just really enjoying and soaking in how he looked. And then a couple years later, when I was still kind of trying to get over him, I kind of sheepishly showed his picture to two of my friends, and they were like, they did not think he was cute at all. And it was so
Okay, but his
funny.
cuteness was very specific to what
It was
you
very specific to me and to feeling that affection
have.
for him and what I saw in him. And it was, I mean, not relationship, it was wonderful. It was great that I had my first long-term relationship. It was also such a disaster on so many levels, but it just showed me the obvious catchphrase, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And sometimes our brain can even trick us to be attracted or not attracted to someone by saying, it's like, oh, I can't stand that little dimple or that mole on their cheek.
Totally.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I'm totally getting off topic here. So back to
Oh,
you. So how did you kind of navigate that? Like, I mean, were you looking at guys and being like, okay, he's ugly, but I'm gonna give him a try? Or
I don't know. I think my
when you saw
husband
your
is
husband's
I
photo?
think he's so cute. I think he's really, I'm always like, I've got the cutest guy in the room. He's here with
Oh,
me. No,
that.
he's super cute. But I guess, I mean, obviously, like if someone was like really physically repulsing to me, I was obviously not. But if I was like a decent looking person,
Yeah,
give it a shot.
try. Right. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
fair. That's fair. Cool.
Yeah. You know, like going back to like, they're not perfect. I'm not perfect. Everyone's got a look, everyone looks different and they're doing the same thing with me.
I like that. I like that approach because I think I'm actually kind of too hard on myself when I don't necessarily think someone's attractive. I feel like I should give it a try and someone else is going to find them super cute. I think that it's okay for me to just, go out with people who I think are cute. I don't know why I'm so hard on myself in that department. I feel like I'll get bad karma for not thinking people are attractive, that it's like really
It
shallow
is
of
one of
me.
those things
And
where
I'm
you're
gonna,
like, no, I should give them because you don't
yeah,
want to think like I'm a superficial jerk and I'm
right.
not swiping them because of this very like how they look, you know.
Right. Yeah. And they could turn out to just photograph badly and maybe
Or
they're
there's times when people put pictures that aren't real on there and you're
so,
like, oh, was that you or was that you 10 years ago,
or not you at all. I mean,
or
I
not you or not you at
I
all.
went out with this guy. There's tons of guys on Bumble who say they're not capable of changing their age on the app. It's a very weird thing. I'm like, can't you just email customer service? But nevertheless, I
A
did go out.
birthday in there? Wouldn't it know? I don't know.
For some reason, I turned 40. Everyone who started showing up looked so much older than their photos. It was a phenomena. Also, I just went back to my high school reunion, and all the guys I thought were super hot don't appeal to me in the same way anymore. Some of them have
Yes,
not aged well.
I have gone to
So
both of
wrong.
I've gone to my 10 and 20-year high school
Yeah.
reunions, and the guys with the best hair in high school are now bald, and the ones that were the jocks are now fat. It's like people, their physical attributes, everyone changes,
It's so true. Everyone changes. I
The
mean,
guys changed much faster than the girls. I feel like at 10-year, all the girls looked exactly the same. And
oh my
then now at
gosh.
20-year, everyone looked different.
I feel like I look so much better than when I was 25 because I actually know how to take care of myself now.
Oh no, I definitely felt like I was way hotter at 27.
Oh, I don't think. I mean, I knew you. I thought you were gorgeous then. I think you're just stunning now too. You got the
But
mama
in a different way. I've got like my like mom vibe now, where I had like my hot single New York vibe
glow. Maybe. I think you're a classic
years
beauty.
ago. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, so Barbara, did I skip over anything important about your internal work prior to meeting your husband?
No, I think, I mean, it was really, I moved to Texas. Everything changed. Like, I mean, I left my like best friends. Like, I mean, I had like an entire life change when I moved here. Um, and, I really started thinking much deeper about what I really wanted. And I knew that I didn't have time to mess around with folks that weren't going to work for me.
Mm, yeah, for sure.
Kind of how I felt.
That's wonderful. Were there any kind of therapists or spiritual teachers along the way, or was just you telling you or friends?
It was kind of me and looking around at people in relationships that were around me, like my brother and sister-in-law, I think this is their 10-year wedding anniversary this year. Just looking at these other relationships, even looking at my parents' relationship. And, now that I'm back in Texas, I'm like seeing them all the time. And, it's like, what do you really want? And what can you kind of like glean from these relationships around you on like, what do you want? What do you don't want? What do you need to work on?
Sure.
Um, all of that. But yeah, no, I've never had like a formal, like a therapist or um anything like that. But I did probably read a lot of like self-help books.
There you go. There you
I'm
go.
a pretty like laid back, easygoing
Mr. Good
person.
enough. It was 10 pages, little parody
Yeah, it was
book.
really like, Stuart Smalley, like I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and eventually I will find someone.
That's wonderful. And I mean, it seems like you did come from a very good home. I mean, I met your dad. He's wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, my parents are still married. They've been married for 43 years. And I mean, they have their challenge. Their personalities are very different, and they have their challenges, and that's something that you like look and you notice like as a kid, but you kind of like dive into it more as you get older, like where did those things really come from or what was really going on there.
Mm.
But yeah, they're amazing parents. I'm incredibly lucky to have them. And I'm so lucky that they're still together and a very important and active part of my life.
Well, it seems like somehow you learned to be curious and self aware, whether that was a response or reaction, and that's such a wonderful quality and obviously takes you so far. And self awareness is, and the ability and the willingness to look within, I'm sure, is really vital to maintaining a healthy relationship. So, with regards to your marriage,
Mhm.
what do you like about it? Is it good? Are you happy you got
Oh my
married?
gosh, yes. Yeah, like I said, I feel like I won the lottery every day. Like,
Oh,
oh my gosh. Yeah, my husband's amazing. I
he
always
won the
feel
lottery. He won the
I
lottery.
do. I feel like
He
I
just
won the
opened
lottery.
the
I mean,
door.
I did. I won like an online dating algorithm lottery. And one of my things with online dating is like they're gonna make the online dating will like make the match based on the algorithm, but you have to take it the rest of the way.
That's true.
Like it's they're just gonna show your pictures to each other and then their responsibility is off. But
That's
you
true.
have to like pick up the ball and run from there.
Yeah, they're not great after the match, like those little hokey phrases to
Oh,
say
there's nothing. Yeah, they're done.
you're on your own.
Showed you the picture. That's all they were really like contracted to do.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Wow. So
but
I
yeah,
mean,
get the
I
rest
mean,
of
like,
it.
what about it though? I mean, because obviously you're progressive.
Yeah. Well,
It's in an old institution. Like, what is the value?
yeah. I always thought it was so cheesy when people would say, like, oh, my best friend is my spouse. I'd be like, I already have best friends. I don't need more, like I kind of had that idea. But then I was like, oh my gosh, like I am. Like Will is totally my best friend. I mean, it's obviously the person you spend the most time with, so you better like him as a friend.
Right, sure. Wow.
Um, but yeah, I mean, being married, is awesome. And I think one of the things about dating and getting married as, like, I would say like an older person, but I mean, we're not ancient. There, you don't, the small stuff I don't care about. I don't put any energy towards like, oh, he left this fork out, or, like all these like little things. It's like, we both just let it go because I think we both know how lucky we are to have found each other.
Oh my
So
gosh, I love that. I feel like you give me such hope because I think sometimes I talk to women who are like, well, we got married and had a kid, and, like there's not much passion in our relationship. I wasn't looking for that. And that's okay, and they're happy with that. Or I
I
meet
think your relationship for sure goes through seasons. Like, obviously, right now we have two small children. We have a 3-year-old and a 3-month-old. Like, I wouldn't say like the flames of passion are like, lapping
let's
at
call
our,
the babysitter, honey.
door every night. I mean, let's get real. We're both pretty tired right now.
Yeah, for sure.
But in it, but the love comes in different ways, and there's always going to be like ebbs and flows in relationships. And I think this is like, as someone who's not in their 20s or someone who's old, like you understand that. You're just like, yeah, this is just like our season of life and where we are right now, and we're going to just enjoy this as much as possible. I think it's really also helped that like we're both very established in our careers, like we're stable financially. So we can just, we can focus on ourselves and making sure that like our family unit is very good. And there's not a ton of like external stressors that I think you would have if you were younger in doing this, in like raising small children and trying to get your career off the ground and doing all these things. It's been really nice to have this part of my life, and my husband as well, where we, focused on our careers and travel and all of these things, and now we're totally focused on these kids. And we joke like, we have been to the restaurants, we've been to the concerts, we've been to the clubs, we've we did it. We did it. And
But there's still more Netflix films for you to
there,
watch.
there's
So
there's always more content coming out. Yeah.
there's always more
But
content.
now we're totally okay with being boring and staying home and just hanging out because we did all of that. We
You
we
got
I don't feel like I missed out on anything because I had, like, I kind of joke, I didn't have a bachelorette party when I got married because I had a bachelorette party for 15 years, like I did it. And now I'm doing this.
I
And
love
there's nothing, this is what I want to be doing right now.
Oh, it's so good. I just love seeing your enthusiasm and your positivity about your husband. It's just
I
really
love being married. Oh my gosh. I don't know. I think it's great because I think I've obviously, we've been married for, it'll be 5 years in February. We got married like 2 weeks before COVID happened. And that was interesting in itself because we came back from our honeymoon the day before lockdown. And then we literally were just with each other for like a year. It was kind of crazy, but you know, it's been great. I do. I love being married. And I think it has a lot to do with being older. And there's like this maturity there where you really appreciate the other person because you realize how easily it could have not happened.
yeah, yeah. And I think before I kind of saw men as this like foreign object that was supposed to adore and give to me. And I never really thought about like me giving to them and what we were creating together and it being really another human being who has needs and wants and sadnesses and joys and good days and bad days and what it might feel like to kind of join forces with someone.
Yeah, and I think, I feel like we're very on like equal footing in our household. And that was something that was very important to me in who I was looking at as a partner. It wasn't like, the man runs the house. Like I was not going to be in that really, like we're very partners in this. Um, and when I'm having a bad day or not feeling well, I know like he's picking up where I'm like, if I'm at 30%, he's at 70, like, and we're balancing each other
Yeah,
that way.
wonderful. Would you be willing to share a little bit what it was like getting pregnant and having your children, and if you needed extra
Yeah.
help or anything
Yeah,
about that?
absolutely. So one thing I thought, so it was, I don't know, maybe a month into COVID, we had been married for 6 weeks. I was 37 at the time. And it was kind of like, do we want to try to have a kid? And my husband's like, well, this like worldwide pandemic is going on. I was like, it's always going to be something. Like, there's never going to be the perfect time. So let's just start trying. Um, and what's funny is you spend so long trying not to get pregnant, learning how to get pregnant. There's a ton of trial and error, and no one talks about like exactly like, what to do, what not to do. Don't use this lube. Here's how many times you should have sex during your like, fertile time. And no one talks about any of this stuff. So it takes time to like Dr. Google and talking to friends. And I feel like I could do a podcast on that, like how to get pregnant.
Follow up.
um, so it took a while. I mean, I think we try. So, I mean, I found out I was pregnant in October. That was with my first child. That was, oh, so okay. So from March to October, basically, I just feel like late September. So it didn't really take that long, but it is a very different experience having sex to get pregnant versus having sex for fun. It is fun, don't get me wrong, but it's, during the time when you're fertile, it's like very regimented and you're like, well, maybe I don't really feel like it, but
It's
I
6 o'clock.
we're gonna do this.
Right.
It's yeah, it is. It's a lot of that.
Mm.
And, I had a girlfriend in New York she's 2 years older than I am. And she had recently had a child. And she was like, let me tell you, you know, go on Amazon, get the ovulation sticks, all these things that you're like peeing on all the time, to see like, when am I ovulating? But it was great advice. And it helped having someone who was just a couple of years older than me, who had recently gone through it, to kind of like be a guide and like give me some, because you go to the gynecologist, they don't tell you any of this stuff. I mean, they tell you some things, but it's not like, oh yes, you need to get the ovulation sticks and you need to pee on them, like all the, and so it helped having a guide.
Yeah, for sure.
um Being pregnant is a trip. I mean, for your first pregnancy, you don't, other than, like not feeling well, you don't get big very quickly. But then you do, and you're like, you look at these maternity clothes, you're like, surely I'll never be that size. And then you become that size, and you're just like, my God, my
Wow.
body is not my own.
Gosh.
But yeah, and then with our second child, it 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 took almost a year to get pregnant, and I had one miscarriage in there, which was very early on, only at 8 weeks. So,
After
uh,
all that work, and also, I mean, you have this living being
yeah,
inside.
and one thing so also what was very different is between pregnancy 1 and number 2 is, my job at the time required a ton of travel,
Oh
and during
gosh.
COVID, I was always home, and so when I was ovulating, it's like, well, I'm here, and then with the second pregnancy, everything was kind of back to normal, and there was whole months where it was like, well, I'm home 1 day out of the 4, and so basically, those didn't count. But yeah, it took about a year to get pregnant. And I was actually scheduled to go see my doctor about getting a referral for a fertility specialist 1 week after I found out I was pregnant. So, like, that appointment was lined up. I was like, and I know a lot of doctors, I really loved my gynecologist. And one of the reasons for that is, after, if you're over 35, you're of advanced maternal age, and
Geriatric pregnancy.
they don't call it that
Oh,
anymore,
that's good.
or
One.
they don't call it that to your face.
Okay.
Um, but I feel like she was always like very like level-headed and chill and just kind of told me how it was. They'll say like, "Oh, if you haven't gotten pregnant in 6 months, then, you need to go see a fertility specialist." And I mean, I felt like it took us 6 months to figure out like actually have how to have sex to get pregnant.
Wow.
And then she was like,
About
"You know what?
this.
Most couples, my doctor said this, most couples, if you have sex for a year, you will most likely get pregnant." And I even feel like in the second time I was trying to get pregnant, while the miscarriage was this total bummer and like very sad, at least I knew I could get pregnant again.
Mm,
I knew it could happen.
knew it could happen.
So I felt like that after that, it was like, okay, like we're going to keep trying. I really didn't want to go through IVF and all of these tests and things.
Hard.
Um, and I feel very lucky to have gotten pregnant twice at my age with no interventions. I just, time and a lot of hard work.
Good fit.
But,
Thanks for
and that's another thing, like everyone's body is different and
it's so
it's a different experience for everyone. And especially having met other moms who are younger than I am. First of all, I'm like the oldest parent at daycare for sure by a lot. So the other moms that I meet, they're in their mid 30s. They probably had kids in their late 20s, early 30s. So they have like a 3-year old, 4-year old now. And a lot of them have done IVF and all these things. Like no one's talking about it,
no
but
one talks about
it's so common.
so common. And even if you think, okay, like you see people in Dallas who have 8 kids, and you forget, okay, there's 3 or 4 years between each of those kids. They were probably trying to have a kid that, so
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
just
for
not at all
sure.
what people portray. Like you hear about the accidental pregnancies all the time because it's so dramatic, but it's
Yeah.
rare that we hear about all the effort and things like, okay, like getting, trying to get pregnant, having sex for getting pregnant is a specific kind of thing too.
Yeah.
Barbara, you're just so amazing and beautiful and glowing and inspirational. And it's so like, I want what you want, but at the same time, I feel like, how could I possibly find it? And do you have any kind of parting advice for me?
Sure. I would say, I mean, everyone says like, you find it when you're not looking for it. But I think if you're getting out there and you have like a really open mind and like a positive spirit about it. And when the bad dates or all this, you just kind of like, I know they can be traumatic, but like brush it off as like as a tale to tell, like just keep an open mind and a positive attitude. And, you know, every pot has its lid. It will happen. Um, but yeah, I mean, I was in a place where I was like, I'm gonna be okay if I don't get married and have kids. I'm gonna have an amazing life and it happened to work out for me. And I feel very lucky that it did. And I feel very lucky to have met my husband. But had I not met him, maybe I would have met someone else. You never know. Maybe I would have met someone else. Maybe I would still be single and just doing my thing. And, that's okay too. Like there are so many different paths to take. I feel very lucky to have been able to get pregnant and have 2 kids. That was something that, I wasn't sure that was going to happen. Um, so I think it's a lot of luck. It's a little work and, just keeping a positive outlook. And when shitty things happen, you just brush it off and onward and upward.
Wonderful.
But I feel like I'm kind of like that in most aspects of my life. So,
Well, having supportive friends and family like you definitely helps move
oh, for
through
sure.
those.
Yeah.
I'm so happy we reconnected, and I hope
Oh,
that
me
you'll get
too.
to talk more because it's just so nice talking to you. And it reminds me when we hung out a little bit in New York City. It was so fun, and
Yes.
I
Oh,
just so
so
admire the life that you've built for yourself. I'm just so happy for you.
well, I think that the times in my life where I've made big, hard decisions and changes leaving New York. I mean, really like moving out of Texas after college. Like anytime breaking up with that guy I'd been with for a year, anytime you make like really big, hard changes, there's always a lot of personal growth that happens around those events in your life. And they really are like life defining events. Like hadn't I moved back to Texas, I wouldn't have met my husband. I mean, there could have obviously been someone else somewhere else that I would have clicked with and that would have happened. But, it's like the pieces of the puzzle kind of come together to form whatever your story is.
So true. And I feel like you just are someone who puts so much good and positivity in the world, and it's natural that that should come flooding back to you. I can't wait to meet
I mean,
Samantha.
I feel like good people find good people. Like
That's
this
true.
happens.
That's true. Just be a good and you'll attract good.
Yeah.
So you, Samantha, and how old is your little boy or little girl?
So my son James
Wait,
is 3.
three.
And my daughter Samantha is 12 weeks. So I have a 3-year-old and a 3-month-old.
I love that combo. I feel like I've seen that before. I don't know, the 3 month and the three.
They are so fun and funny. The
I-
second child is definitely a different experience. And the first, I think I was so tired and didn't know what I was doing. And I just,
How could you know what you're
how
doing?
could you? You
You've
never
done
done
it
it before.
before.
Exactly. But it's one of those things where it's just like, it's like mentally, it's crazy because you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. Am I bad at this? Am I good at this? I don't know. So like I was really ready to go back to work because I was like, I know I'm good at work. I want to do something where I feel like I know what I'm doing and I'm good at it. But with this one, it's like I'm really enjoying it this
Oh,
time
it's so
around.
good. It's so good. You're
Yeah,
taking
I feel like
on.
you're going to be up at night. It's okay. You have some like miraculous ability to be up in the middle of the night now. Whereas before it was like, I just felt destroyed every day from being up at night. But now it's like, no big deal. Up at 3 in the morning, cool.
Cool. It's
Um,
nice. The new clubbing.
yeah, exactly.
Clubbing
Yeah,
with the baby.
this is the new club. Yeah.
Just as loud, but a different type of noise. Wow,
Well,
wonderful.
yeah, no, it's the kids are great and they're really fun. And my husband and I we're focusing on them and everyone says they grew up so fast, don't miss it. And I'm like, well, we're just soaking it all in. That's what we're spending our days doing.
So wonderful. Well, this has been so fun. I've learned so much. And I just want to invite you. I don't know, like we talked a little bit about politics, but if there's any cause that you care about or something that's like really in your mind and your heart that you want to, use this platform to express, I just want to invite you to do
Sure.
that.
One of the things I was, especially having gotten pregnant and being in my childbearing years over the past few years in Texas, where abortion is basically illegal for any reason whatsoever. I donate monthly to Planned Parenthood. I think that I was very concerned when I was pregnant or trying to get pregnant. What if something goes wrong and I'm in a position where I need to terminate my pregnancy? And that was very nerve-wracking for me, knowing that I would need to flee and leave this state in order to get proper care. So that has really influenced, charities that I support and who I vote for. And, I was also very I did not know the gender of our second child or our first child when they were born. It was a surprise, which is really fun. And I highly recommend it if anyone
Oh,
wants that.
okay.
Um, but I'm very nervous for her
Yeah.
and her bodily autonomy. And I was very nervous having knowing that I have a girl that, this is the world that she's being born into. And obviously this is the state that things are in at this moment, and that can always change. But um, just knowing that those types of reproductive freedoms, those choices have been made for her by people who don't know her and have nothing to do with her, and myself as well. I think that that's really messed up and wrong. And so that's my,
I mean,
that's
these
my
choices
little,
are so
the bee in
personal.
my bonnet
Absolutely. I mean,
politically.
thank you for sharing because I think it's also helpful for people to hear from a mom who obviously really wanted children and do anything to have, children, and was rightfully concerned about, what if something happens wrong and I need this medical procedure, it's not available to me, I don't want someone else making this decision. And then on the other side, I mean, even the access to the kind of information you had about how to get pregnant, how to have sex to get pregnant, is in danger of being taken away from us, access to that kind of information and what little we have. So just thank you so much for sharing. I feel like there's so much more to discuss, but I really appreciate the conversation. And I know
Yes.
that other women will as well. And really just gives me so much hope. So maybe I'll move to Dallas, or maybe could your husband introduce me to one of his single friends?
They can, I mean, it really, yeah, I will keep an eye and an
keep,
ear out.
keep an eye out for me.
I
So
most
spread your tentacles.
certainly
In the
will.
meanwhile, I
Well,
will.
you have many people who love you in Dallas, and we would welcome you
Oh,
with open arms.
that's true. That's true. And my aunt is like the master dating coach and matchmaker. So
Yes.
it would be nice to employ her full force. But yeah, no, I mean, thank you. I've heard about your story from Aunt Lynn, and just like I feel grateful for you. I feel grateful you're part of my family, and just love you. And thank you again, Barbara.
Yes. Well, this has been a real treat,
Oh,
and I've
good.
loved participating. Thank you so much for having me. This has really been fun.